All right, Clayton, Sayfie, EJ Holland here at West Bloomfield High School from the Wolverine.com. Blue 60 is our promo code to get 60 free days of premium content. But we're going to talk a little bit about Michigan's recruiting during the pandemic. Obviously, with the Big Ten canceling fall sports, that includes football. And, there's not going to be Michigan football in the fall for the first time since 1882. Okay, that's disappointing, but how is that going to impact recruiting? So, possibly a spring season. Some guys could play in the spring. EJ, in terms of, or some of the early enrollees could play in the spring. In terms of recruiting, what's the overall impact? What's the overall vibe of the Big Ten saying we're not going to play while there's some other conferences out there that look like they're moving forward with a plan to at least try and play?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen everything from, oh man, this is going to have the same ramifications as SMU getting the death penalty, and it's like,
Yep.
I don't think it's going to be that severe. I mean, obviously it sucks. It's very disappointing, but I think for the most part, most of Michigan's class is pretty solid. I mean, they all seem pretty locked in with their commitments. If other schools have games and the dead period is lifted, you could see some commits visit other schools. But as it stands right now, I don't think it'll have that big of an effect. I mean, it could cause them to lose 1, 2, 3, commits, but I don't think it's going to be a monumental, colossal collapse for the recruiting cycle. I think Michigan's going to maintain a very, very good class, a top 10 class. So I don't see it affecting Michigan too much. Like I said, it will be interesting to see what happens with the fall with other schools, if there is visits. There's still so many unknowns right now to make absolute statements, and you never do that in recruiting anyway. So overall, I just feel like, it's not time to panic at all. It's just kind of sit back and let's see what happens with it.
So we're at West Bloomfield High School, like I mentioned. Michigan has some commits in-state. They have some targets in-state, including Donovan Edwards from West Bloomfield. What are some of the Michigan guys? So MHSAA the other day canceled fall football and fall sports, trying to play in the spring. But what impact does that have on some of the in-state guys here around the state of Michigan that were planning on playing? They started camp, a couple days ago, and then the plug got pulled.
Yeah, well, let's start off with the targets. We're going to confirm here with Donovan in a second, but I believe the plan for him is to go ahead and enroll early and forego his senior season, which is no surprise. That's what a lot of guys are doing. Rayshon Benny will likely not play in the spring, but he is, at this time, not an early enrollee. I mean, he even told me last week, and I mentioned this on the site, he could legit take this all the way to February. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. As far as the in-state commits, Tommy Doman, kicker and punter, right up the street here from West Bloomfield, told me he is definitely enrolling early. So he could be an immediate difference maker. I mean, you always need a specialist. So Tommy will be an early enrollee. Andrew Anthony will also be an early enrollee. So he's not going to be playing in the spring. He's all set. Everything's ready to go on his end to enroll early. Raheem Anderson told me he's still pondering things. Like, I know Raheem very well, and Clayton, you got to see him last week, and you know how much he cares about his team and his teammates. So if anybody plays in the spring, it could be Raheem. I mean, he cares so much about Cass Tech, and I know he was really heartbroken over his senior year. So he's still weighing his options. He told me he doesn't know what he's going to do yet. I checked in with Giovanni Alhadi, who will not be playing in the spring. He is on track to enroll early, but that's not 100% right now. But he said the plan would likely be to enroll early. So that's kind of what the guys in state are thinking of. Like I said, I don't really think anybody's going to play in the spring other than maybe Raheem Anderson.
So there's a lot of factors to this, a lot of unknowns. It was just a few days ago that the Big Ten announced the cancellation. It was just a day or so ago that the MHSAA announced basically the same thing. They're going to explore spring options in both. But let's say some of those guys that enroll early, like Tommy Doman, you even extend outside of the in-state guys with guys like J.J. McCarthy and Xavier Worthy out in California. So you're going to have early enrollees. And it sounds like they're going to be eligible for a spring season if Michigan were to have that. And you could say, okay, well, I mean, they're freshmen. They were about to play their high school senior season. Are they ready? At the same time, you're going to have some guys from Michigan that probably move on and say they're going to get ready for the NFL draft. And who can blame them for that? That leaves the door open at least for some guys to come in as freshmen and play early. Your thoughts on some of the guys in this class? Who's the most ready? Who are some of the guys that could possibly impact and find the field for Michigan this spring, I guess, if there is a season? Again, there's just so much unknown going on right now, and really they need to hammer out some of the details. But before we have those, let's speculate a little bit on who could make an impact.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's just going to be guys leaving, and we don't know who's going to be staying, and so all that's up in the air. So just from a talent standpoint, from a positional standpoint, I'm not expecting J.J. McCarthy to come in and start as soon as he gets on campus in January. But I do think he'll add to the quarterback room. He'll be a really good arm to have in practice and just a good mind in the quarterback room. I know J.J., and I'm not saying he'll come in and teach Dylan or Joe anything, but I mean, he's so dedicated to studying film and learning the game of football that I think he'll be an added addition in the film room and helping those guys in whatever way he can. So I think JJ will make more of an impact from a culture and just an overall team standpoint than he will on the field. As far as on the field guys, I'm not really sure exactly what Michigan's kicker punter situation is going to be, but I think Tommy Doman could go in there and compete right away. You're talking about the guy who might be the nation's best punter. So
he's a 6-star.
Yeah, he's a 6-star. So you can use him, to punt obviously, and he's very good at kicking field goals and kickoffs as well. So he could definitely contribute. I think Xavier Worthy, with his speed and the entire speed and space concept that Josh Gaddis has brought to Michigan, will allow him to at least get some touches. Christian Dixon, I mean, you can never have enough receivers. Christian Dixon is kind of a little bit of a bigger receiver that can still stretch the field, and you can never have enough wide receivers that contribute. So I think that Christian Dixon could see a little bit of time. If Michigan lands Donovan Edwards and he enrolls early, I think he's a guy that could get on the field, even though Michigan, has Zach Charbonnet and everything. But from a talent standpoint, I think you kind of throw them out there. And I feel like some of these guys will get limited snaps while being able to maintain the ability to redshirt. So, I mean, why not throw Donovan or Xavier Worthy or Christian Dixon out there, even if it's, not the entire season, just to see what some of those guys have. It's always tough for early enrollees along both lines to make an impact. So I wouldn't point to anybody there. But those are some of the guys off the top of my head that I think can make some contributions. And the linebacker class is pretty great as well. So I don't know exactly if Junior Colson or Jaden Hood are enrolling early. I know they've thought about it, but neither is 100% sure. I feel like either of those guys could make an impact on defense as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The whole debate about the spring football season, at least in college, is you have the spring season. Well, a month later, summer workouts start, and then 2 months later, fall camp starts, and that's a lot of wear and tear on the body. So you could see a freshman come in and play, or at least be in the rotation. I think the rotations are going to be bigger than they normally are, just because you want to get more guys in, keep guys fresh, because you do have a 2021 season coming up in the fall. We'll see if any of that really plays out. Last thing on these cancellations in high school football not happening in the fall here in Michigan. You've covered recruiting for a long time. What impact does it have on a kid's recruitment when there's no senior season for him? I know it's kind of late in the recruiting process, especially in an odd year like this, but what does it do for their recruitment, and what does it do for their talent development that they don't have this last year to not only showcase their skills, like I said, but actually develop those skills and become even a better player before they do get on a college campus?
Yeah, I think you nailed it there at the end. I think it's more about development than it is about exposure. Most of these guys already have their offers, they're committed, so it's not going to hurt them, but it is going to hurt them from a standpoint that a lot of freshmen go in redshirt, so now you have 2 years in a row with no football, potentially 3 if some guys don't get on the field as redshirt freshmen. That's a lot of time with no football, no real football. So we'll see from a development standpoint how much it affects the guys in this class. Overall, it's just a really crappy situation. I think more so it affects the 2022 guys just because they're harder to evaluate. There's no junior film. A lot of times in recruiting, you'll hear people say that junior film is the most important thing, and it is. So I think that I would agree with that notion. So I think it hurts some of the 2022 guys across the country, and it gives Michigan a tougher job to evaluate both 2022s and 2023s, just because there's no junior film, there's no sophomore film. Michigan's offered some 2023s off of freshman film, and now there's no sophomore film to see how they've progressed or regressed. And it's the same thing with the 2022 class. So I think it's tough. Some states are still planning to have football as of right now, so we'll see if that actually ends up happening. But I think the cancellations are going to be more and more common. It'll be interesting to see which Michigan commits actually play this year, if any.
All right, well, that is it for this edition of the Wolverines recruiting show here from West Bloomfield. Clayton, Sayfie, EJ, Holland. Remember, Blue60 is our promo code over at thewolverine.com for 60 free days of premium content.